Come on,
Killing me.
StreamYard.
Yes.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. My name is VashSky. I'll be your host of the ceremonies if StreamYard will let me. And Lou, you are here as well, and everybody's super excited to see you. Lou, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be seen, I guess. Better to be obscene than unheard, or vice versa in this case.
Well, that's a fair point right there. Yes. Much better to be seen than heard. Yeah, StreamYard's been having some issues as of late there,
well,
so that was very strange. I did not put us in the back. I don't put us in the back for that intro so we can come on together. But unfortunately, that is not what happened today. Anywho's, welcome everybody to another amazing show talking about the Backlot, talking about movie making, the business of film, cinema history, all of that stuff and more. Lou, how are you doing today?
Well, I'll tell you. It's been a celebratory weekend, of course. We all know that for the flag and the nation. And, I thought we got rid of kings 250 years ago, but that's just me. Silly me. Silly me.
That's I was under the impression of that we did get rid of kings a long time ago, but apparently they're back. Wait, are they? I'm not sure. It's very funny, but it's also Father's Day, and the king of all fathers. No, I'm not going to do that. But Lou, do you know what debuted today 20 years ago?
I do, and I'm not telling. No, I'm just kidding. I saw it, and I remember it, but I don't remember it this instant. So, pardon my frail old Kepala, and tell us.
It is no problem at all. 20 years ago, from Warner Bros. Entertainment, an icon took flight. Happy anniversary to Batman Begins. Oh, the start of one of the best trilogies of all time.
Yes, I agree, especially considering the crap they did beforehand. I say that because we of the genre guys chose as our subject Batman Forever. The first of the MTV Schumacher all gay all the time Batman movies. And it's so bad. I forgot how awful it is. It's just terrible. But you'll hear more about that when we formally put it out there for the world.
Right.
Anyway, yes.
And oh man, it's just a revolution in terms of not just the Batman saga or the Batman franchise of films, but also to, I would say, comic book movies in general. Nobody had ever seen something this grounded, this portrayed in this specific way here before Batman Begins. I don't think. Some people had taken darker themes, obviously, and darker tones, but nothing so relatively realistic. Like you could kind of imagine this stuff actually happening in real life, and it was pretty cool. And also, I would say put Christopher Nolan on the map, even though he was definitely a top tier director before then. He became a household name after this movie.
Yeah, it was pretty spooky and pretty brilliant, and I think it's because he understood it was about character and storytelling, not about rubber nipples and funny suits, and ugly cars, and of course you had all those great people with him, Morgan Freeman and everybody involved in this movie was right on. Was right. By the way, speaking of which, I don't know if you saw this, but the wonderful Gary Oldman is now Sir Gary Oldman. He was knighted in the Queen's Honors this week. I
did see that, Sir Gary Oldman, which also another one of those legendary actors portraying a cacophony of characters here in Dark Knight, or I should say Batman Begins. But speaking of the Dark Knight, speaking of amazing actors, this clip has been going around here of Heath Ledger as the Joker in Dark Knight 2008, walking away from that explosion at the hospital. And yes, folks, it was practical, and they only had one take in order to do it. I can't show the obviously the clip up top, but I can show you the behind the scenes clip there. And I remember Christopher Nolan talking about it and how it was like, you had to put a lot of trust and faith in an actor to do something like this, and the whole like.
I'm just glad he had the
around.
legs for it, But
yeah.
and not everybody does.
Right. The whole portion where he kind of stops and looks back at the explosion and it doesn't actually go off, that was all ad lib because they did have an issue with the explosive charges at that time. But he played it off brilliantly and was very consistent with that character. Only had one shot and he pulled it off really, really well. So that was that's fun to see. Very, very good.
Yeah. Well, and of course, Nolan is about doing it in the camera and doing it practical, and
yes.
You get great stuff that way.
Amazing stuff, indeed. Oh, I love that. I love that trilogy so much. I understand, falls off a little bit with the third one.
But I think that's one that you can watch every couple of years.
Yeah.
Which is why, my theme song on Genre Guys is always go ahead and buy the damn disc because who knows what they'll do to it down the road. But I think that trilogy is especially profound. My only frustration, and when I buy my next computer, whenever that is, I will fix it, is that my computer's CD player is not Blu-ray. And therefore, if I want to watch these things, I got to put them up on the big screen on the wall over there. And it's not as convenient when I'm doing something else too, but that's life.
Well, perhaps I can talk to you after the show and maybe we can get that adjusted for you.
Well, I'd rather just, like I say, I'm one of those diehard Windows 10 people who has a machine that won't run 11. And so one of these days I'm going to have to break down and make a new one on my desk. But I'll do that. But we'll see. I've seen some nifty ones, but we'll see.
We will
Besides,
see.
I hate to tell you this, but that wonderful microphone arm that you gave me is still awaiting installation because I made the old one sort of kind of work and I didn't want to mess it up. So in the next incarnation of wherever I saw a house this morning that I'd love to buy. So we'll see. Let's see.
Keep me informed.
Yes.
Eric Stratton with the 777 on YouTube. I saw Jimmy Stewart at the opening of Universal Orlando in 1990. He is my favorite actor. Harvey, anyone? Lou, do you have any stories about Jimmy?
Only that I used to see him all the time. Whenever you went to Chasen's, which my family did fairly often, which was a famous high-end restaurant come chili joint in Beverly Hills, there was one table that was always Jimmy's, and it seemed like every time we went, he was there. So, there's that.
Absolutely.
And, he and Henry Fonda were roommates for a long time and compared notes on a lot of different things. They both kind of came up at the same time. There's a book. I'll find it sometime and mention it in one of these shows. But about the two of them and how they were different but the same, but had the shared experience of becoming stars in the same period of time. And, and of course, he was a serious war hero. I mean, he flew missions and could have died and all that stuff. He was a captain of bombers in World War II. And all that stuff was real, gang. And the mortality rate for B-17 and B-29 people and for submarine people was the highest of any profession in the war.
Of course. Saw some World War II era bombers actually when I was in Palm Springs recently, and seeing them up close and seeing them fly, it's like wow.
Well, especially because in the days at the beginning of the war, the fighters couldn't go that far, so they could escort them about into France or into Belgium, and after that it was so long, guys. See you when you come back out, and that's why those planes were called flying fortresses and such, because they had so many guns and they flew in a tight formation that was the best to protect them against the Messerschmitts. So,
man, amazing stuff, fascinating stuff. A bygone era for sure. And thank you so much, Eric Stratton, for that amazing experience of seeing Jimmy Stewart there. And well, of course, Lou, he saw him all the time. So, that's pretty great.
But not the same kind of situation. And I think it's funny of those movies that were at the bottom of that shot you just had. So many, such a range, I mean, when you go from Vertigo to Harvey to Mr. Smith and Philadelphia Story and Rear Window, I love Rear Window. I think Rear Window is one of my really favorite Hitchcock films. partly because of him and partly because, damn, Grace Kelly was she one hot number or what in that movie? And she was the ultimate in cool glamour. And there's a whole book out there, by the way, about Hitchcock's obsession with cool blondes and all the different actresses he used in his movies. And
Interesting.
it's interesting backstory stuff in that book. I should find that one to give you the clip too also. But anyway.
And now he's played on an annual basis via It's a Wonderful Life.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Very, very cool, fascinating stuff for sure. Speaking of fascinating, though, we have some box office news to go over.
Oh.
About some films.
Wait, people are still buying tickets to movies?
Allegedly.
I thought that was over. I thought people had theater fatigue. No? Okay, good.
No, they're still buying them, but to quality films there. Lou, that's for sure. Culture Crave, How to Train Your Dragon remake debuts to $198 million at the global box office. Production budget was $150. Marketing budget allegedly was around $100 million. This via Variety right here. Very, very interesting. How to Train Your Dragon nears $200 million and beats Oppenheimer as Universal's number 3 biggest opening at global box office post-COVID, crushing projections, scoring a franchise record of 7-day opening overseas, after grossing $114.1 million over the 67 international markets, including previews. Allied to its $83.7 million weekend in the U.S., How to Train Your Dragon hits a $197.8 global opening.
There's an interesting side factor involved in this movie. In the latest Jurassic, in whatever happens with Harry Potter. And that is when you see ad pub figures on these movies, let's remember that they make more sense because they're not just publicizing the movie, they're sending people to the theme parks.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great
So it's kind of
point.
amortizing your advertising over several products with the one movie, and the merch and all the rest of it. And indeed, when they chose, what are we going to do for the themed family suites at the Helios Grand at Epic, they're all Isle of Burke, which was a franchise that you would not have expected. But once they decided and they made the commitment, they've really promoted it. And now that seems to be the most, the most complete of the various lands, even more so in some ways than Nintendo. So.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it really is complete. There's really a attraction for every single person. It's so well rounded.
And the street performers, the people playing these parts, gosh, they're good. Gosh, they're good.
They're so good.
They had to find a kid with the right nose to play this part too.
That's true. I was watching the original actually with somebody very recently. And they were like, whoa, those people at Epic are just like this. And it's like, yeah, it's pretty crazy how exacting that they actually got them.
And guess what? Just like at that wonderful thing at Hollywood, they rehearsrsed. They actually got into it. They didn't get hired Tuesday and told, oh, well, put this on and stand around on Wednesday.
Yeah, like Luke Skywalker at some other park?
Yeah.
Anyway. But I saw this movie over the weekend, and it's I mean, the best things that you love from the first one are definitely in this remake here. They did.
Yeah, I saw Culture Casino's review, and he just raved about it. He said, "Yeah, is it epic cinema for the ages? No, but does it deliver? Heck yes. It is a fun romp, and it delivers on the everything that was promised in the original animation.
Correct. And they flesh out some characters.
Unlike certain recent live action animation movies we know.
Yes, that's very true, actually. This is much more faithful to its original that it actually takes off of. But I will say the cast really make their roles their own. They definitely take a slightly different direction, at least with some of them, namely Astrid for sure, but sometimes Hiccup. But Gerard Butler, by the way, is made to play this role. He obviously played voice acted the animated film, but also is playing the same character in live action. He just, his presence and how he embodies that role is really, really cool. Very, very fascinating. But I mean, look, it's a great picture. And to bring it to a new generation in the way that they've done it. I think they've done a pretty fantastic job. And like Lou said, it's a great brand deposit to, create newly found interest and enthusiasm in this specific franchise so that you can sell more merch and sell, the theme parks and all of that. And it's just really, really good.
Bread cones with macaroni and cheese and pulled pork.
Yes.
Which I understand is pretty great.
I've heard is pretty good.
Yeah.
Speaking of pretty good, well, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has passed $500 million worldwide. Whoa!
Million, not billion.
Well, yes.
You just said 500 billion.
Did
That
I?
would be a whole lot of tickets, yeah.
Yeah,
But anyway.
that'd be a lot. But no, $500 million at the global box office. That's pretty decent, although we know that this film was very, very expensive. But hey, at least it did cross that $500 million figure. I know that Reckoning Part 1 kind of struggled throughout its box office run, but it
A
looks
lot
like
of this is timing of when they release these things. And,
yeah.
so.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was funny, folks. You didn't see it because we fixed it. But when I looked at our listing for today's show, the automatic keyword generator thingamabob spelled it Final Reckoning, WRECK. Hardly a wreck. So,
Yes.
but then, listen, personally, I'm amused when AI screws up like that. Sometimes I watch things with subtitles on just to see how badly they'll get it. Anyway, or when they send me an ad for something that I happen to have liked a cartoon with a cat, so suddenly they think I'm a cat person. Well, they make me sneeze. I've never had a cat in my life, nor will I ever have one, because they really make me terribly allergically. And that's the beauty of the internet. I can enjoy them from afar without the fur. So,
right.
But I sit there going, somebody's wasting a lot of money buying these lists. Or when you get a phone call, hey, I'd like to talk to you about selling your house. Well, I don't own my house. I rent it. Oh, oops. But their boss paid for a list of people to solicit who theoretically were, not just alive and breathing, but had some reason to be interested in their services. Surprise. So.
Surprise indeed. Speaking of alive and breathing, well, there's a movie that goes into, the opposite of that with Ballerina. And Ballerina broaches the $100 million mark at the global box office on its second weekend, I believe, with a $90 million production price tag, not including marketing, reaches a 91.8 global cum.
And see, there's an example of timing and releasing too, because they released it late. They decided to put more John Wick in it. They about a year behind it when it was supposed to come out originally almost. Yeah. And they put it out when there weren't enough big screen format theaters to put it in because they were still holding on to Mission Impossible. And so, surprise. Everybody's saying, oh, it's a flop. It's a flop. Well, it's not a flop. It isn't as good as they hoped, but they're already talking about two more with her and involving her in the next John Wick proper. And again, culture said it was a lot of fun. Like I say, not classic cinema, and certainly not the fun that But see, everybody has their own opinion. We were talking about doing the John Wick, one of the movies for genre guys. And originally I said, great. And Hangry said, well, how about number 2? I know you like that one. I said, well, I really like number 4 the best. And then I read a review from somebody. Well, this one, at least it didn't have half an hour of running up and down these steps, beating people up. And I'm going,
what?
Yeah, but it was great running up and down the steps, beating people up. What's wrong with that? So, chacun a son goût, as the man said as he kissed the cow.
I was able to see
each to his own taste.
I was able to see Ballerina over the weekend, and it definitely has a lot of the ingredients that make the John Wick franchise what it is. But one thing though it lacked was Chad Stahelski. Now, if you don't know the name, you definitely know the work because he was the director of the original John Wick series. And without him, there were definitely moments where it's like, oh man, if only Chad was here to really bring this home. Because
which is why I'm excited about the fact that he's doing the new reboot of Highlander.
Yeah. He's just a fantastic director. And it's not just Keanu Reeves, folks. It's really how those films are shot that make the John Wick franchise what it is. And
Well,
Andy
or
Armas
any,
is actually
or any. You and I were talking just before we began about Christopher Nolan and the Batman triumvirate that he
right.
created.
Yep.
And some people get it and some people don't. And when they get it and they know how to put it on the screen, it's the kind of thing you can watch again and again and again. The other example of that immediately comes to mind are the Godfather movies, the originals.
Yeah.
Because if you're changing channels and it's 2 a.m. and you don't care what you watch, if you come across one of those, chances are you're going to stay there and watch the whole thing, even if you've seen it 10 times or 20 times. So,
yeah. And I mean, that's just the qualities of a really great director who understands the source material and really understands how to translate that to the screen. And Anna de Armas is actually really phenomenal. I really like her character, and I can't wait to see her incorporated either with John Wick and the John Wick series of films, or with her own spin-off films. That'd be fantastic. But it just
this was the final appearance of Lance Reddick too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was,
because he passed away.
It was. Very sad.
Well, we all do it sooner or later.
Indeed. But like Lou mentioned, timing. If it would have released in that window remember where Snow White didn't have any competition earlier this year? Man, that would have been a great window to have this, but unfortunately, no loss. But Lilo and Stitch is starting to slow down just a little bit, but it is approaching the $900 million mark at the global box office as well. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like people are going to the movies, but not necessarily, the ones that aren't so great.
All it proves is that all of this talk about superhero fatigue or whatever, the only kind of fatigue the audience has is stinker fatigue.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally true.
And the word gets out real quick if it's a stinker, and nobody wants to go. And it doesn't matter if you're going to give them half price on Wednesdays or get them in the theater for free so they'll buy an $80 popcorn bucket in the shape of the head of a character they've never heard of because they're too young and don't care. Come on.
Or it gets out even before that film even hits theaters. Like this, for example.
Look at what they're doing. Yes, but look what they did just this week with which movie is it? I know, for the Superman movie. Amazon had a deal where they were selling tickets for 2 nights before the real opening, only to Amazon Prime members. And I thought, well, that's about they'll add that into the opening weekend numbers and try and goose it that way because they're afraid it isn't going to happen otherwise. So, and meanwhile, this thing.
Oh, boy. This thing is just not looking good at all. Goodness gracious.
$300 million on a cartoon. If you think Roy had to tell Walt no about other things, imagine if Walt had said, hey, I got this idea. You know that classic story of Snow White? We're going to make a full feature animated movie out of it. And it's only going to cost, honest, Roy, I promise I won't spend a dime over $300 million. At that point, if he was my brother, I'd have smacked him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Pixar's Elio is on track to earn $27 million to $34 million on its domestic box office opening weekend. Reported budget, like Lou mentioned, $300 million. One of Pixar's worst openings ever. That's not good. That's not good at all for this picture right here.
How in the wide, wide world of sports do you spend that much money on a cartoon?
Well, I remember when Tangled came out. Tangled comes out, what is it? Is it 2009, I want to say, or 2010? Something like that is when it releases. And that film, November 24th, 2010, that film cost $200 million to produce back then. And I was like, whoa, that's an astounding figure. But when you realize that they reworked the script, reworked the story over and over and over again, and even changed up directors multiple times, originally going to be helmed by Glenn Keane, and then obviously I think it was Byron Howard.
See, but if you keep it to the script before you ever shoot a frame, you can rework it forever, and it doesn't cost much. But if you go ahead and have to wait till you've shot 20, 30, 40 minutes of the runtime before you realize, oh, no, wait, that won't work. You got trouble.
And apparently that's exactly what happened with Elio.
But it's supposedly, legendarily, it's what happened with Alice in Wonderland, is that they literally threw away about half the movie and started over again.
Right.
But even then, the costs were not as crazy. So,
yeah, costs weren't as crazy. And Alice in Wonderland, the original, is kind of a disjointed film. It almost plays like a package film where you have multiple vignettes
and Walt
and so
said,
forth.
people couldn't get behind that weird little girl. She was just a little too offbeat. Maybe not, maybe so. But also, when they were working on a movie like that, that was the project. They were thinking down the road to the next one. But my point is, you already had the staffing in place on regular salaries in those days. They weren't hired by the movie. They were hired by the week for 50 out of 52. You had the machines, the multiplane camera. You had, it didn't cost a lot to throw something away and start over again, because what else were you doing with it at the time,
Yeah, that's true.
And the same thing is true with scripts. If you're just working on the script, I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again. When we of the genre guys did, Stallone and Wesley, Demolition Man, they said they spent 6 years trying to make that script work before they ever shot a foot of film. And that's why, although it was expensive, it was a hit. But if you just said, well, we'll just sort of start shooting and see what we get. And if we don't like it, we'll fire somebody. And, well, no big deal. We're all in a workshop here, right? Yeah. Give me a break.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's...
Hey, I got a great idea. Let's make a movie about a one-eyed kid in a colander and spend $300 million.
Uh-oh. Not good. I don't think that's what you should be doing, Lou.
That clip in Pro's intro where I want you out of here. George, I'm sorry, I didn't know it would go this way. No, get out now.
Yeah, exactly. Out. Yeah, this was, I think this was a not the best route that Pixar could have gone, and to spend this much money on an original film like this is quite the gamble. And I don't know, whenever I see that trailer and play in front of the movie that I'm watching, I never feel compelled to actually go to it. And I'm in this business.
The worst part is, when it fails, which it inevitably must, and loses a bunch of money, they will take as the lesson, well, you see, that's why we should keep doing remakes, because original IP doesn't sell, which is not the lesson at all. The lesson is crappy original IP made for 10 times the cost it should be doesn't sell. I mean, let's think of $300 million. What was the budget on Godzilla? Minus
20 million. Yeah.
Okay.
Or was it 20 or 12?
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
There was a if you could do that for that amount of money, even in Japan, and people say, oh, well, it's Japan, they don't pay as much. Want to bet? Tried to rent an apartment in Tokyo lately, one of the most expensive places in the world. But when your entire effects, when you don't have to worry about post-credit scenes because the credits don't run for 20 minutes because there aren't that many people involved in making the movie.
Yeah. Okay. So Godzilla runs about $15 million. So around
yeah.
there. I mean, that's just absolutely insane.
I mean, the point is, this is not rocket science. There are plenty of examples of how to do it right. And the idea that in spite of that, somebody in very high authority who watches every movie 4, 5, 6 times is saying, no, we really need to spend that much.
No good. No good, Lou. Not good at all. But speaking of
bueno.
What is very, very good, we have a lot of our friends actually joining us in the chat right here. We have Kiki and Luca. We have Juliet. We have Jan Monroe, Amnuck. We also have Drunk 3PO in the chat right there. Thank you so much.
See, the way you're saying that, it reminds me of, The Wizard of Oz. And some of it was nasty, but some of it was good. And you were there, and you were there, and you were there.
That's very, very true. But hey, it's great to see everybody, and thank you so much for coming on and stopping on by and
What a
seeing
gang.
what the show is.
Hey, and
all
by the
about.
way, gang, our musical interlude this week, this might be a good time to mention it.
Oh, yes.
It just goes to show you, even if the movie stinks, the music can still be good. I found a clip, a suite of the soundtrack from a movie called The Swarm, which is about bees taking over the world, basically. And it's great Jerry music. But there's also a clip that I guess, Vash, you want to put that clip of Michael into the notes or the
absolutely.
Chat. But
well, we can play it.
Yeah, well, can we? Good. That would be even better. Here's Michael Caine explaining about why he made this awful movie, which he says is one of the worst movies, if not the worst movie he ever made.
I think we can. I'm going to try it. We're going to see. It's a good story.
One of the worst films I did was called The Swarm.
I remember it. I paid to see that.
Yeah. I'll give you the money after.
Thanks.
And The Swarm, and I'd just gone to Hollywood. I'd done Alfie, and Shirley MacLaine had seen me, and she was a big star, and she had a choice of leading man, and she brought me from England, and I was in Hollywood, and I made a picture with her called Gambit, which was a success. And then they offered me a film with Henry Fonda and Jose Ferrer, Olivia de Havilland, and Fred McMurray. And I thought, bloody hell, this is fantastic. And they said, will you do it? I didn't even read the script. I said, yeah, I'll do it.
Have you ever been in a situation like that where you look at a script and you go...
I always ask about the people. But finish it up, because that's the point.
Absolutely.
And it was a swarm. and the first inkling we got of how bad it was is we got this special situation where all the ceiling was swarmed with bees, and me and Henry Fonda were doing a scene underneath it. And as we were doing it, we saw these little black specks on our shirts, and we looked up, and the bees were shitting on it.
Pretty great stuff.
Wait.
right
The
there.
next line, the punchline.
All right. Let's see.
I didn't know it at the time, but the first review was in.
There you go.
I didn't catch that part.
That's the part I love.
That's some great stuff right there. Fantastic.
Anyway, but the music is great. Well, I don't care about that. But anyway, you can click on it. It's in our description for the show, and I guess you put it in the chat as well. Mm-hmm. And it's a classic Jerry, big budget, epic piece of music. Enjoy.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Absolutely. Everybody check out this week's Backlot Jukebox, The Swarm. And, sometimes, I think you're totally right, Lou. Sometimes the music, just really soars above the film. I've seen that multiple times with some B, C, maybe even D grade filmmaking. But
it's what you might call a B picture.
Yes, indeed. It's kind of funny because there's in what is it? Film school, if you want to call it.
I've been there and done that.
Have you?
That's on your end, isn't it? Whatever that rumbling is.
Yes. Sorry.
No
about
big
that.
deal. I just want to make sure it wasn't something here driving over me that I didn't see coming. So
I do. I do apologize. Sorry, but in film class, I guess one of the exercises they go over the sequence in E.T. where the kids are leaping off of the road with their bikes and so forth, and you see that amazing score with those amazing visuals of like the crossing of the moon and stuff like that. Awesome stuff. You take that score away, though, that scene plays out completely differently.
Yep.
And then you realize just how important the score is to these pieces. A great piece of music can really lift up a film for sure.
Well, one of the standard film school things, at least back when I was a lad, and all the film schools used it. It was a piece from, I think it was Gunsmoke. It was a Western TV show. And they gave you all the pieces of a scene and let you edit it however you wanted to edit it. And the variations in the pacing and in the timing and in the tension that different students would give it based on how they cut it really showed you something about how great editing versus crappy editing in most cases works. But then, see, if you want the funny story about film school, when I went to film school, it was the first class where you actually got to sort of make some serious movies, shorts, but they were 16 millimeter and they were sync sound and all that sort of thing. And you made 5 of them during the course of the semester. They were all, 10 minutes long. And there was this one guy in the class who had obviously been making stop motion animation like since he was 5, I mean, his stuff was so good, it put Gumby and every other kind of stop motion that you'd ever seen to shame. It put the Pixar lamp to shame. It was that good. And he did the first one and we were all amazed. And he did the second one and we were all amazed. And now we're on to the third of the 5 and he does it again and it's still fantastic. And for the fourth one, the teacher said, listen, obviously you know how to do this. And I think it's great you're entertaining us all with your talent, but you're not learning anything new. So for your next one, you have to do something that isn't stop motion animation. So when the day came to see his movie, we were all kind of curious because he was kind of a strange guy who kind of kept to himself. So the movie opens and it's him and he's driving and he's got this angry look on his face and the music is very stirring and he's driving up into the mountains and he opens the trunk of the car in this empty piece of woods and takes out on a hanger in one of those plastic garment bags an army uniform that had his name on the little nameplate on the pocket, above the medals. And he hangs it on a tree and he goes back to the trunk of the car and he's got like 12 rifles and shotguns and guns. And he takes them out and he proceeds in slow motion out of something like a Dirty Harry movie or whatever to blow the living daylights out of this uniform with this grin on his face. And the last shot is him smiling. And the room got very quiet at film school that day. And the teacher said, well, I think for number 5, you can go back to animation. And he looked at him and just smiled. Because it's like, it revealed the inner psycho inside this kid. But I will never forget that day, the dead silence at the end of that movie. Oh my God. So, people reveal themselves in their work, I guess, or most of them
they do. I guess they do. Yeah. There is something I want to share with everybody here, talking about editing. And when you referenced it, I was like, oh, I got to share this real fast. This is a video all about editing and the importance of it. And the title of this is When the Director Actually Listens to Feedback, because apparently, the editor seeing it with others, his contemporaries and so forth, people working on the movie and stuff, would give him a little bit of feedback of how a scene could play out and what techniques you can actually use and how to interlace shots in order to either increase energy or reduce it or do things that set up certain montages and so forth. It's really, really interesting, really, really fascinating. Definitely want to implore people to give it a watch because, as something of an editor myself, sometimes it's actually really good information to know exactly how to convey a feeling with just the scene, and really, really good stuff. So,
well, and part of the problem is that people get taught that it all should just flow. One shot should lead to the next shot, should lead to the next shot. Yeah. And I remember on one of my movies in school, where we had a crew of a cinematographer and an editor and a production manager and yourself. And my editor, who was a wonderful lady and a great editor, that's why I picked her to be on my crew. And we got to the big tense climax scene and I gave her the film we'd shot and she said, this doesn't cut together. I said, I know. I want people to be nervous. I want people to be disoriented. I don't want it to go smooth. And she just almost couldn't do it because she had been so ingrained in if it's moving from right to left in this shot, it should move from right to left in the next shot. And all of those rules that are there to be broken on occasion to make the effect in the audience's mind and heart that you want. So
I know the director for Die Hard, John McTiernan, talks about this during the director's cut or the director's commentary on the film. He talks about how he had to fire his first editor because he really wanted a frenetic pace when it came to some of the editing and sequences in order to build that tension, just like you were talking about, Lou, and that disorientation and so forth. And the first editor was just, he even talks about it in a very similar fashion that you do, that, you know, just couldn't hang, couldn't deal.
You know, I watched him shoot some of that movie.
Really?
Because I literally lived 3 long blocks away from the Nakatomi Plaza. And they were up there for 4 or 5 nights because the building, it's actually the Fox Plaza, and it wasn't finished yet. And they said, can we use it? They said, sure, just don't break it. Well, right in the middle of Century City. That was interesting with the tanks and the pyro and everything else. Yeah, well, that's, you know, the movie does not happen on the screen. It happens between the eyes and between the ears of the audience member. And if you remember that, you can make it work. And it's same goes for acting and directing actors. You know, when I was doing that at film school, the general complaint was it's the best film school in the world, USC, University of Southern California. And you learned all about cameras, and you learned all about editing, and you learned all about sound, and you learned all the technical side, but you didn't get enough instruction in how to deal with actors. So what they did is they got a guy who was a famous at the time acting coach in Hollywood to come in and advise those of us who were doing these bigger movies. And this was a guy who had done a one-woman show that got great acclaim that he rehearsed for 2 years. And putting aside what I said about 6 weeks or months on 2 years is too long. It's time to go on and do something else. But anyway, the deal was you could go to his acting class, his workshop up in Hollywood at this little theater, and watch what he did. And that anytime you wanted him on the set to help advise you, call him up. He'd be there, which was wonderful. But I never called him. And one day he's around the campus and he sees me. He says, you know, how come you've never called me? I said, because when I'm standing there and I've got a crew and I've got a cast and I've got a day that I have to finish a scene, I can't just say hold everything and rehearse it for 2 years. And he looked at me. And I guess he got it. But it's just, and for example, I had a scene where this character is supposed to be sneaking a gun into a purse in a darkened hospital room without anybody knowing that she's putting it there. And suddenly the door opens and they catch her. Well, the way we did that was we're shooting down on the floor with her, with the purse, with the gun. She's nervous. And all you do is you put a light behind her with a piece of flagging in front of it. And to simulate the door opening, you just wipe it from right to left. And suddenly this beam of light catches her and she turns around startled. Well, you know, we shot it 6 times, and every single time she jumped the gun because she knew it was going to happen. So I said, listen, there's no sound on this. It's all going to be music anyway. Just listen to me. And where she could see it, but the camera couldn't, was this 8-foot tall ladder. And I just casually leaned against that ladder. And I said, okay, you get the gun, you open the cylinder, you check to make sure it's loaded, you put it back together. And I pushed the ladder over. Totally startling her with this huge bang, totally startling everybody. But you know what? I got the shot. I got her looking startled and not anticipating and not jumping the gun on that wipe of the light. And You do what you got to do. You do what you got to do. So, you
do what you got to do.
Here's a little directing lesson for everybody out there. Improvise.
Improvise. It's a theme of Ballerina, actually. And Century City, don't take a century to come back.
That's right. I told you that one, right? The restaurant there, Century House. Good restaurant. Too bad it went away. Now it's a food court. Oh, well. But
speaking of returning after a century, whoa! Look at this story right here from Variety.
Ooh.
Disney sneak peeks Zootopia 2 at Annecy announces studio return of Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Moana director Ron Clements. It's by Jamie Lang right here. The Annecy Animation Festival this Friday morning, Walt Disney Animation Studios offered a first look at its highly anticipated sequel, Zootopia 2, coming to theaters on November 26th. While amazing as that is, we're going to scroll way down here And let's see, as part of today's presentation, Disney legendary director Ron Clements' Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Princess and the Frog, and Moana was inaugurated into NSC's Walk of Fame. This is so cool, Clements said. It's such an honor to be memorialized this way. Unbelievable, so thank you. Thank you with all my heart. I am very, very appreciative. Also, too, it says right here, in addition to this honorific event, it was also revealed that Clements is returning to Walt Disney Studios Animation in an advisory role. Quote, I really have been enjoying retirement, he said, but I'm excited about just returning to kind of mentor. There aren't as many old people around as there used to be, and there certainly are so many young people who want to work in animation. Bush, who announced Clements' return, said, I've actually unretired a very important person here, Ron Clements, who's coming back to the studio. Ron is one of the reasons that I do what I do. The legacy he helped build is the foundation we walk on. So
they
that
didn't
is...
ask him the big question. Would you spend $300 million on Elio?
I'm going to say no on that. I don't think that's something that Ron Clements would have done. But Ron Clements, obviously, with his amazing directing duo partner John Musker, basically created your guys' childhood. I mean, if you grew up in the 90s or 80s, that is, and it's
by the way, I don't know if it's here yet, but it should be soon. If it isn't, Genre Guys, did Hercules, and getting to watch that again, that is so damn good. It is just better than you remember in every single way. And that of all of those movies, as great as some of the others are, is my favorite of his by far.
It is on 230PO here on that pod place. Definitely give the channel a subscribe.
Go check that out if you want to get
archive.
it. If you haven't seen the Genre Guys yet and you want to get a taste of what it is we do, just go look and you'll find it. And yeah, that's right, Great Mouse Detective too, because I actually have cells from that. I was able to pick up not just one of Radigan, which last week was our jukebox, but I have one of Basil and what's the girl's name? I forget. In the gears of Big Ben, and it's like a 4-pack of cells, so you can see the various layers of the gears of the clock in the background. I forget where I got it, but I got it. And
that's so cool. It is Olivia or Miss Kitty Mouse.
I forget. But of course, that movie had a special resonance for me because, as I have mentioned in the past, when my mom was in radio in the golden olden days, she died in Basil Rathbone's arms, I think 6 times with 6 different dialects on Sherlock Holmes. So there you go.
That's cool. That's great. Fantastic stuff. Well, Basil on Baker Street or Great Mouse Detective, obviously, definitely getting directing chops there. But I mean, really coming into his own with Little Mermaid and all the amazing Renaissance films that ushered in right there. Just such an amazing time in animation, amazing time at Walt Disney Studios, and I mean, it was definitely tumultuous for sure, as the old guard was leaving and the new guard was actually coming in, not just within the studio, but also too Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and all that. And Ron Clements, John Musker, they were trained by the 9 old men back in the day, and now continuing that tradition, I think, is a good thing. We were talking about off the show, Lou. I think this is very interesting how we have Ron Clements coming back in animation, and we also have Joe Rohde coming back in Imagineering.
Yes, and I rather cynically said that maybe they're paying them these consultancy fees so they don't go up the road to the other guys.
Yeah.
It is a common practice in the legal profession that you put a bunch of the top lawyers in whatever field it is your case is about to be on retainer, so they have a conflict of interest and can't go work for the opposition. So they do it all the time. Ask Ron Coleman about it; he'll tell you. But anyway, I don't know. I'm just, it would be the antithesis of artistic expression for them to do that. And I mention that because we saw the antithesis girl leading Joe Rohde around Epcot one day when they shot some footage of that.
That was really interesting, huh? I wonder what Joe Rohde had to say about some of that stuff at Celebration Gardens right there.
Yes. What's the celebration? It was, if it had a sponsor, like the Concrete Makers of America, maybe it would have been okay. But
They were definitely celebrating for sure. But Ron Clements, he's amazing. I actually had the chance to sit behind him and John Musker when they were actually seeing the princesses that they helped direct in Little Mermaid and Nick and I Rose from Princess and the Frog actually be honored in their Legends ceremony. I think the voice actress of Belle and Mulan and so forth, they were all honored right there. That was really cool to see their work personified in awards language there. What was that?
I said in the flesh.
Yes, it was super, super cool. That was fantastic. Kiki and Luca with the 499. Pixar handles nearly all animation and VFX internally at its headquarters. Do you think they need to outsource to India to reduce budgets like Universal? I mean,
first of all, Kiki and Luca, we don't know that that's really true anymore, because with all of the back and forth between Disney and Pixar, and they put that studio together up in BC, God only knows who's doing what where anymore ever since Disney took over. So I don't know.
I would. So that's an interesting idea. There have been calls for Disney, both at Pixar and Disney Animation, to reduce production costs any way they can. One of those is outsourcing. We know that a lot of studios do outsource a lot of their fun
But at
products.
the same time, didn't they close a studio in Singapore? Was it Singapore? Or
Maybe they might have.
seems to me they had one there and they shut it down. So I don't know.
But was
Besides,
it was
if
that
you're
Disney
outsourcing,
Tunes?
was that, I forget which company it was, but
Okay. Go ahead, please.
but if you're going to outsource to India, it's going to be cheaper, not more expensive. That's the
Right,
whole
and
reason for doing it. And so if you do that and you still spend $300 million, you've really lost the thread of the plot, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think
don't
that's
know.
what Kiki and Luke is asking is should they if they aren't? And
You know, that's something we have no way of. If you showed me the books and I spent a week or two looking over them, I could tell you, but they're not gonna, and I'm not gonna. So I don't know.
if they aren't already,
Bottom
which
line
the
is you got to
possibility.
make a movie where people care about the people and what happens to them, period.
Right.
I've cited it before, but National Lampoon back in the day did this wonderful thing about what they called the Suddenly Everyone Was Run Over by a Truck School of Literary Criticism. And that was if when you turn the page of the book or you cut to the next scene in the TV show or you cut to the next scene in the movie, it says, and then suddenly everyone was run over by a truck. Do you care?
Mm-hmm.
Do you care? And I know we've all seen a lot of movies lately where the answer is no, not really. And at that point, it's all about popcorn buckets, not about caring. And that doesn't mean everything has to be deep drama with great trauma, or it just means it has to be people you're rooting for to win, not lose. People you're in favor of succeeding, not failing. And it's not therapy, it's entertainment, and there's a difference.
Indeed. And to
If
expand
it's
on that
therapy
point,
for the creator, it's definitely not entertainment for the audience. I can
Right.
make that a hard and fast rule, that's for sure.
to expand that point even further, I think if you have an original film like Elio, right, and we know the buy-in for original films isn't that great. You really have to sell these films at least once in the theaters, and then it gets going with a franchise later on. That's kind of how the modern movie making is kind of done. If you have something like this in which you could reduce costs, at least with its initial film, by outsourcing, maybe that's something that you pursue, and then maybe you have the whole gang work on like the sequels and so forth as you build momentum. But for right now, something has to change, or else Pixar's not going to be around. So that's something that they have to square up there in Emeryville. And I think we have James all day with the 199. I'm surprised.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm surprised Iger is bringing back the OGs. Go ahead, Lou.
Well, all I was going to say was, if you dilute the brand with crap, then if Pixar isn't Pixar anymore, who cares if it goes away?
Yeah.
At that point, it's a building and a back catalog. It's not a vital, active, creative endeavor.
Yep.
And by the way, what does it say over there on the right? Does it say Pixar? No, it says Walt Disney Animation Studios. So
maybe that'll incorporate more than just the current studio. Well, Ron Clements coming back. Yeah, I mean, Iger, I don't think this was an Iger call, but Iger certainly needs people who understand how the business functions and understand what the products need to look like in order to continue producing entertainment. Right now, you have a bunch of people in a bunch of different places, whether it be animation, Disney Animation, Pixar, that are super green, don't really know what.
They didn't get hired based on their storytelling. They got hired
Correct.
based on their politics and their social realities. And that's
because
true
they
at Imagineering and everything else too. So,
And because they were cheap, Lou. They just come out of school. They just come out of either animation school or maybe they didn't go to a school at all. And now you have to incorporate them into this larger culture. And unfortunately,
they need to be
changed.
mentored in the modern verbiage. Because mentored is a bad thing, right?
Yeah, I guess so. That's a good joke right there.
women-tored is okay, but mentored, no, we can't do that.
But Alan Ng over there, Film Threat, had actually documented under Jennifer Lee her tenure right there as the head of Walt Disney Animation, how she was, pushing out the what Alan Ng calls the old white guys. So there's something to say about that, Lou.
Well, listen. When you were not the famous Ron Clements, you were just the young Ron Clements trying to get into this. If somebody appreciated you for your work and your talent, that was a great thing. But if they said, okay, we need 3.5 more white guys to balance out the 12 black guys, we'll hire you. Where's the joy in that? Where's the recognition in that? People, there's a line, I think it was Napoleon. He said about soldiers, he said, they will not sacrifice their lives for a medal or for pay. You have to speak to the soul to electrify them. And he's right. He was wrong about a lot of other things, but he was right about that.
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely have to speak to the soul. And thank you for speaking to us, James All Day, Kiki Luca, and Eric Stratton. Very much appreciate all you do. Now, I want to bring up this last topic to Lou very, very quickly right here because we have covered it in, some of our other channels, but I really want to get Lou's take on this. This right here, Disney and Universal join forces to sue Midjourney over AI images of Darth Vader, Elsa, minions, and more. Lou, did you hear the story and what it was all about?
I did not.
Okay, so the war over AI and intellectual property just hit hyperspace as Disney and Comcast and Universal bring the hammer down on the AI company Midjourney. In a dramatic escalation of the entertainment industry's pushback against generative AI, Disney and Comcast's Universal have filed a joint copyright lawsuit against the popular AI image generator Midjourney. The case, filed Wednesday in federal court in Los Angeles, accuses the San Francisco-based company of exploiting beloved characters like Darth Vader, Elsa, and minions without permission. It goes on to claim that the company is generating and monetizing thousands of infringing images through what the studio calls a, quote, a bottomless pit of plagiarism. According to the complaint, Midjourney pirated the libraries of the studio's creative works, using their most iconic intellectual property to train its AI systems and output images that closely resemble copyrighted characters and designs. Among the examples cited are AI-generated depictions of Yoda with a lightsaber, Iron Man flying through the clouds, and Pixar's Buzz Lightyear in mid-launch. From Universal's vault, the lawsuit references unauthorized images of Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek, and Poe from Kung Fu Panda, all created through user prompts within the Midjourney platform. The studios argue that Midjourney has not only failed to implement safeguards against these outputs, but also continued releasing models that produce increasingly detailed likenesses of copyrighted characters. And you can kind of see in this compilation that I put together just what the accusations are and what this lawsuit's all about. I just want to know from you, Lou.
I think they have a heck of a case. I think that's pretty obviously an infringement of copyright. It just is.
Do you think, Lou, that there's any way that Midjourney could maybe safeguard its platforms in such a way that it prevents these images from being generated? And on the first question, go ahead.
Well, the question is not can they do it. The question is can they do it in a cost-effective way. if they have to have a human being look at every single thing and have an encyclopedic knowledge of these former images, and that's a tough road to hoe. But clearly these are infringements. There's no question. I think they got a heck of a case. The question becomes, look, if I am, if I'm Leica, okay, they make cameras, and you take a picture of something with their camera that is infringing, and you publish it out there and sell it, is it Leica's fault for creating the tool, or is it the person who did its fault for using it in that way?
Right.
So that's where it comes down to an iffy legal issue of who has prime responsibility for doing it. And if they're saying every one of these companies is going to have to pre-censor every image that goes through their system to make sure it isn't doing this, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, that's a tough road to hoe, as you said so eloquently there. I want to go ahead and scroll down here to why Disney may have targeted Midjourney specifically out of all the AI image generators here. Midjourney has not yet responded publicly to the Disney Universal joint complaint. CEO David Holtz, however, may have forecasted this legal storm back in 2022 when he admitted to Forbes that the company's data acquisition process involved, quote, a big scrape of the internet. When asked about whether he sought permission from creators, Holtz answered bluntly, there isn't really a way to get 100 million images and know exactly where they're coming from, he admitted. Quote now sits at the center of the multi-million-dollar suit.
Which is what I think. Said. Is it the tool, or is it the people using the tool that are violating the copyright?
Right. And you can see down here how, what is it? I
just thought of a comparison.
Please.
You know, a lawsuit was thrown out by the Supreme Court just this past week that the nation of Mexico brought, saying that American gun companies were responsible for violence in Mexico because they made the guns.
Yeah.
And the court said, well, that's ridiculous. And they were right. So it's the chicken or the egg question, isn't it? It'd be interesting to see what Ron Coleman has to say about this, because he's certainly more expert in the law than I could ever be. But when they talk about Disney and Universal getting together, well, yeah, sure. But not because they love each other. They're not going steady, you know.
Not at all.
And in a way, the fact that it's them and not, let's say, Warner Brothers or Sony or anybody else, only says they have characters that people are more desirous of ripping off than the other guys, and therefore doing it more. And when you're going to file it, if they win this suit, it will apply to everybody else too. It will be the precedent that wipes it out. So,
yeah, and that's also that may have been why Disney went after Midjourney, for example, who I think only has like 11 programmers or something like that. It's a really small crew, rather than something like X, right, where both can generate, like through Grok, for example, both can generate images, but you know, one is not necessarily legally ready, I don't think, to take on this fight than the other. Last December, the Writers Guild of America urged top executives at major Hollywood studios, including Disney CEO Bob Iger and Donna Langley, chair of NBC Universal Entertainment and Studios, to take legal action against AI companies that have, quote, looted the studio's intellectual property, a vast reserve of works created by generations of union labor to train their artificial intelligence systems. I think this is also a way to placate maybe the creative community and to protect their creations as well, along with maintain their IP. So,
except remember that when you are creating these things under contract for Universal or Disney or anybody else, you are selling them to them. You are turning the copyright over to the studio. You don't retain it. So, you know, it's Disney's Darth Vader, or, you know, whatever character. So,
right.
That's the difference, is that you're selling your work. And therefore the enforcer of the copyright has to be the owner, because they're the ones with standing saying we paid X million dollars, for example, to buy Star Wars, but the value of it has been diluted by this piracy. You have to remember there have been cases in the law, some of the obvious ones. What I'm wiping my nose with right now is called a facial tissue, but I don't call it that. I call it a Kleenex, even if it's not made by Kleenex. But for all those years, they didn't fight everybody who'd called themselves a Kleenex. And at that point, the court said, sorry, that bird has flown. In the food industry, one of the major famous cases like this was the Maui onion. The sweet onions from Maui never bothered to copyright or trademark their onions. And so everybody who grew a sweet onion anywhere in the world called it a Maui onion, because guess what? We can sell it for more money that way, or we can sell more of it in volume that way. So this is the brave new world we live in. And there's no doubt when you look at the comparison that it's the same thing. And piracy, and even if you gave it a different name, you know what it's like? It's like when Disney first started going to home video with their classics, and suddenly these cheap Chinese and Japanese animation studios would turn out their own version of Snow White or Rapunzel or whoever, and Disney had to call it Disney's whatever to try and stand out, because if they announced, well, we're coming out at Christmas this year with, I don't know, Cinderella, 16 different Cinderella videos would get out in November because they could do them cheap and dirty. And they sold them dirt cheap. They were the ones in those big bins at Walmart, where it's take any 6 cassettes for $1. And if it was for little bitty kids, they might not notice. So
yeah, well,
you think the average kid who likes Frozen looks at those pictures or Aladdin now and says, well, that's not Aladdin, and this is Aladdin. I don't think so.
Well, like Lou said,
somebody's at Sean for $1.99 is asking, Lou, what was the movie in the 70s not copyrighted? Well, they're all copyrighted. The question is whether they can enforce them. I don't know the movie that you're referring to. I'm sorry, Sean. But I can't imagine anybody put out a movie in the 70s without that bug on it that says copyright. The question is, if it's a story that's in public domain, then you've got to do something to make yours different enough that yours is protected, which is what Disney has done with all the fairy tales that they've used and all the Brothers Grimm stuff, which, remember, the Brothers Grimm didn't invent these stories either. What they did was went around and got the oral tradition and took notes and printed it. So a tale as old as time, as the saying goes. So anyway.
Good point on that. But yeah, I mean, as Lou was mentioning in his photography example, I think it's only a matter of time before the focus switches from maybe the generators themselves to the users generating images and inputting those values.
And I see Jan Monroe in the chat talking about It's a Wonderful Life. For many, 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 many years, there were certain movies you couldn't put out on cassette because somebody owned the rights. The most famous, I think, for a long time, of all the John Wayne movies, The High and the Mighty was not available because somebody owned that copyright and wouldn't let it go. So, there's all these technical issues about these things, but it says technically, Hammer says copyright at the moment of fixation. Well, yeah, but how do you prove it without the registration? Remember, the Writers Guild has a script registration service, because even though you want to sell your script to a studio and they're going to own it eventually, to protect yourself, the Writers Guild would have you believe if you pay them whatever it is now. I know in the golden era it was $75, $100. Now it's probably more to officially register it. But then people said, yeah, but all you got to do is put it in an envelope and send it certified mail to yourself, and don't open the envelope, and it'll have a postmark with the date on it. And someday you can open it up and show people, hey, I wrote that first. Well, many, 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 many people have tried, and very few of those go anywhere. The famous one in Hollywood, though, is the song Happy Birthday, which was, I don't know who. It's so old, nobody knows who really wrote it. But these famous two spinster sisters registered it, and everybody who used it had to pay them a fee. In fact, a show I did once used another song. If you remember the song Santa Baby, I think Eartha Kitt recorded it originally. That had a lot of currency in TV because it wasn't Merry Christmas or some of the standards. And they didn't charge too much as a license fee. But for that matter, there are all these funny deals in the background. For example, you might wonder why, if you turn on any show from the 70s, the 80s, and people they're talking about going on vacation, one of the places they will mention in passing, even if it has nothing to do with the plot, well, we were thinking of going to Puerto Vallarta. You know why? Because the Puerto Vallarta Tourist Board sends them a check if they get mentioned, as a way of promoting Puerto Vallarta as a vacation place. So, there are games behind games and layers behind layers in the biz, and
sure,
that's the way it is.
Good stuff right there. Samuel Maine with the $5. What is the cost to translate films into different languages?
If you do it well, only your self-respect. If you do it poorly, my famous example. There is an example, I forget what the movie was, but it was an American film, and in the movie, a motorcycle cop drives up alongside a convertible that's speeding and yells, "Pull over, buddy." And in Spain, that was translated as sweater. For real, because they looked up pull over, and that's what they came up with, was sweater. So there you go. True story. Absolutely true.
Oh, man. Well, I'll tell you what, we talk about AI and what it could be used for and how you can incorporate it into films and so forth. There are some tests being conducted of like films being translated for other languages, but like having AI actually generate like the mouth movements to go with the
sure. Well, look at all these fake ads where you've got Donald Trump Jr. selling diabetes medicine or something, and he had nothing to do with it. And for that matter, I've seen a lot of memes on Facebook lately where it's supposed to be it's a story about Robert De Niro, and they've got an AI of Robert De Niro that barely looks like him. It's not very good. And I wonder whether it's not very good because it's not very good, or if they do that on purpose to avoid issues of copyright. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
there you go. Nova translating Spanish is no go. Says that was when the Chevy Nova came out. It didn't sell well in Latin America. And the other, because the word means Nova, it doesn't go. In fact, the other story that I heard Ricardo Montalban tell many times was when he did the Chrysler Cordoba, and all of his friends said, "What the heck's wrong with you? You're native Mexican. You don't know how to pronounce Cordoba as opposed to Cordoba." It turned out that I think that was Chrysler, that their market research people found that 99% of Americans would have pronounced it Cordoba, and it was more memorable to them that way. So they intentionally ordered him to mispronounce it in the commercials. Whoa. Because that's what they found people would hear. So he was embarrassed for the rest of his life by real Spanish-speaking people coming up and saying, "What the heck is?" And he had to explain the story over and over again. So there you go. Cordoba, Chrysler Cordoba with fine Corinthian leather. Remember those commercials?
I do.
Maybe not, but it's Cordoba. And if you watch the movie with Gary Cooper, they came to Cordoba from Cordoba. That's how they say it. But nope.
Wow. Interesting. Well, I think dubbing and voiceover work, that's going to be much more interesting as time goes on, and maybe even a lot cheaper, depending on how much they use AI. Dumb and Dumber used that sweater joke. They did. I remember that when Harry, is getting pulled over by the cop. Cop goes, "Pull over. Oh, it's a cardigan. Thanks for noticing." And he's holding the bottles there. Very, very interesting.
But SG, it wasn't a joke. It was real. It really happened. So there you go. But
Indeed. Well, speaking of really happened, our show really happened. Thank you so much, Lou, for sharing amazing stories as you do.
We've come to the end of our exciting experience for the week. My God, what do we do for an encore a week from now? Tune in and find out. Oh.
Indeed. Tune in, indeed. That's going to be Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, right there on this channel, on That Pod Place. Definitely make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet. Hit the like button, because it really does help us out against the YouTube algorithm. If you really like us, go ahead and share us out. Would very much appreciate that. Lou, what do you got going on?
Well, a lot with you. I mean, there's no truth to the rumor, and we're just good friends. Because now we're doing Monday nights for the pro show. Most of the time I'm there. And certainly Tuesdays at 3 for the That Park Place show, more about theme parks than anything else. And then, of course, I do the Genre Guys, which occasionally you edit one for this channel and put it up. You never know. It could happen. I'm just ribbing Vash because, the more popular he gets, the more work he's got to do. And man, there's only so many hours in the day, and a guy's got to sleep and eat and drive back and forth to Palm Springs. And it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. And I'm glad it's you because you put up with me. So that's basically it. But you never know. And I got a new thing I've been working on in the background, and I think I found a way to make it work because I was having technical difficulties, but I think I've got it pretty much solved. We shall see.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what you got cooking up, brewing up in the background there. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Anyway, folks, you want to give them that famous email address that nobody seems to use? Shame on them.
Yes. Come on.
If you have a question about the biz and how it really works as opposed to how you've been told it works, and you think I could answer it without exposing too many personal confidences, you send it there, and eventually I'll see it.
Yes, T3P online at yahoo.com. Yeah, is gas up to $8 a gallon yet in California? No, but I tell you what, what's going on in the Middle East right now? Get ready.
Gosh, Highlander 2. What is everybody's obsession? I'll tell you what, Wild Man of Yavin, Skyfall, actually, I happened to watch again last night, is great, but Spectre is when they should have quit because it's perfect. It is so perfect, and it ends with the right ending for that version of Bond, and then they screwed around for 8 years, whatever it was, and made this piece of disaster about... Anyway, send them to Lauren. Don't send them to me. I shouldn't say that. He'll get mad. But the Highlander 2 questions, I mean. But yeah, Wild Man of Yavin, Skyfall is swell, but Spectre is maybe a perfect movie. It's just that good. It really, I'd forgotten. I just watched it about 3 or 4 nights ago. Well, you're wrong, Stuff Vulture. Spectre was absolutely a perfect mix. I know we're done, but we talked about the new and finale, Mission Impossible. And one review I read, which I haven't seen the film, but they said the last hour is some of the best action movie ever made. It's too bad you have to wade through the 11 hours of exposition that come before it to get there. Well, if you want to see exposition and action perfectly blended at minimal itchy butt cost, Spectre is that movie. It really, really is. Anyway, Dr. No. Well, we did. Yes, we did. The Genre Guys did Dr. No. Wild Man of Yavin. The final one is awful. It's just, I mean, look, if you've got James Bond, he's got the girl, and they're driving off into the sunset in the Aston, you're done. Stop. Don't take the car. You'll kill yourself. And they do. Anyway.
All right. Well,
all right.
Anyway, note, I'm going to go ahead and send you over to a live stream that's going to be hosted on the Park Streamers Hangout, it looks like, with special guests on there. I'm always looking to promote channels that really deserve the credit, and they certainly do over there. Berry Place 28, Theme Park Casual, and According California. So definitely check that out. Maybe go ahead and hit that bell notification when they go live. And thank you so much for watching Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you. We will see you next time. Same bat channel, same bat place.
And look out for those bees. They'll make a mess of your shirt.
Oh, no, not the bees. Not the bees. The bees. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.